Hey everybody, what's going on? What's going on? Hope everybody's doing all right. Happy Saturday to everybody. Happy Saturday. It's been a minute, been kind of up and down and all around, but you know how life goes. But anyway, this is gonna be fun. This might be the funnest show ever, or the most boring, just depending on how you are. But we're gonna talk about some things that are very relevant to what's going on in society and the direction we need to go. This is gonna be more so. It's not gonna be like a debate. It's gonna be just complimentary perspectives because I think people don't understand the language of communication very well. So, you know, when I heard this brother speak, I was like, yeah. I'm like that. That's I understand. I understand, but you know, I need some people to understand me and then further understand where he's coming from because you know we get all this talk about this is a holy war and all this and that, and I'm just like, if it's a holy war, then we need to fight with holy weapons, right? But people don't seem to understand that, you know. And every conflict stems from a idea. You know, ideas are the main weapons of warfare. You know, everything is vying for territory. You know, and I just think that as so-called righteous people, we give up too much territory. You know, the fight is the territory is the hearts and the minds of people. And, you know, just off of what we believe, what we think that what we perceive to be true, you know, I think that we're not really comprehending the message, if that makes sense. But you know, I think we're gonna drive it home today. But anyway, so while I'm waiting for my co-pilot today, you know, I'm just gonna say about the what's it called, the Louisiana. All right, so Louisiana, I'm hearing that they mandated the Ten Commandments be posted at every school. Now, I don't know if I agree with that, even though I am a believer, but if there's I don't know if we're able to do that under the law of the land. You know, but I mean, hey, you know, we live in a time where they're mandating all sorts of evil. So if we're gonna mandate the devil, let's mandate the Most High God. You know, let's do that. But I think that takes away behind the intent of, you know, the Constitution. When we talk about separation of church and state, you know, when I think about stuff like the Holy Roman Empire and, you know, how Christianity became the official religion of the land, and, you know, how, you know, anytime you have power, you're going to have corruption. And, you know, when you have corrupt political people and they assume the position of religious authority, you know, you're gonna get all sorts of nonsense in the land, you know. And that's, you know, if you read the Bible, you can see that, you know, you had a bunch of corrupt Pharisees sitting on the seat of authority, and, you know, they basically were holding the people in bondage. So, you know, I think when the founding fathers talk about separation of church and state, I think that's what they were talking about. You know, they don't want any kind of state mandated religion, because if the political reins get in the wrong hands, then what's going to happen? Because at the end of the day, we're still a nation of law. And, you know, this is why it's so important that people participate in the political process. It is your civic duty to do so. You know, besides just further educating yourself on matters. Hold on, I gotta comment. Religion aside, there are good morals to live by. It's just the start of kids thinking out morally early. I agree wholeheartedly. But the problem is when you set precedents, when you set a precedent, then somebody else is gonna come along and say, well, the Christians, they got to post their laws, so why don't we post our laws? We should get to post our law as well. And my old coach, he always told me, he's not my old, he was a college coach, but the only thing I learned from him is he said never give people bullets to shoot you with, because they will come back and shoot you with them. And I think that's something that we, as I want to say the righteous remnant of the world, the righteous remnant of the world have to consider, because we set precedents that come back and bite us in the butt. My co-pilot's here. So, let me see if I can accept. Hey, what's happening?
What's happening, brother? You all right?
Yeah, man. I'm sorry for the mix-up, man. I thought you were on Central Time.
Now, hold on 1 second. Oh, hold on.
All right. Good morning to you. Neil.
My fault, man. Daddy duty. I told my kids, I say, man, I'm about to go live. Y'all can't be knocking on my door.
Hey, man.
Yeah,
Family
they,
first. Family first. It's all
yeah, they
good.
come anyway.
Yeah. Anyway,
But
man.
yeah, man, this been a long time coming, man. I know you had asked me a long time ago to go live or put the idea out there. I'm like, yeah, I'm with it. Let's go. So EJ, I know you got your thing going, I got my thing going, so it took us a minute to connect, but I'm glad we finally got a chance to talk,
Yeah, man. I
face to
appreciate it,
face.
man. I appreciate you. How you feeling?
Man, I just woke up not too long ago, man.
Okay.
I probably look like I just rolled out of bed, but but everything is everything. I'm smooth, man. I'm smooth. I'm a little tired, but I'm gonna get through. I need to be up anyway because I got some things to do today, so.
Yeah,
Let me talk to O, and then get my day started after that. You know,
yeah. Hey, are you ever did you catch that X-Men '97?
I didn't, bro. I don't even know where can you go and watch it? I know.
Officially Disney Plus, but I
Oh,
got the Fire Stick.
okay,
I
okay.
got
Say no more. Say no more, bro. It's officially Disney Plus, but
yeah,
yeah, no, I couldn't. I figured it was on like something Disney because I know Disney had bought out Marvel, so I'm like, or bought Marvel, so. I was like, yeah, I don't think I have. I don't have Disney Plus, so I was just like, all right, whatever, man. It is what it is. I guess I'll just check it out maybe some other way. So I think Disney owned Hulu too. I got a Hulu subscription, but um, he said maybe one day I get a chance to check it out. But nah, I ain't see none of it, bro.
yeah. I checked it out, man. It was surprisingly good. Like, I ain't gonna lie, it was. They had more being gay, and that was a totally unnecessary storyline. If he wasn't gay, it would still go fluidly, but
Mm.
they just had to put that nonsense in there. And it's annoying, but it's a good show. My favorite character, they killed him, but he's gonna come back. Nobody ever dies in comics.
Exactly. Nah, I'm hip. I'm hip. I followed it. I was like watching, checking out, and listening to, folks give reviews, and what I mean. Spoiler alert for anybody who haven't seen it and wants to see it. I'm gonna just put it out there. I know you're talking about Gambit,
Yeah.
but yeah, of course, he ain't gonna die. I heard about this may have been the finale, the season finale, where they teased the apocalypse
Oh
coming. And I guess Apocalypse, they teased the fact that Apocalypse gonna resurrect him. So, and Gambit probably gonna come back as one of the four horsemen of Apocalypse. So then, we'll see what happens after that. But yeah, bro, I was big time comic book nerd. I used to love the show when I was a kid. But yeah, I didn't see the new one though. But I heard it was all right. I heard it was all right. It wasn't bad. It wasn't too. Yeah, the morph being gay angle, and then I heard it was like a a weird kind of like love affair angle going on with Magneto and Rogue. That was kind of weird. But I heard that Rogue and Magneto got a thing going on in the comics, so they played that on the show as well. And it kind of had people kind of creeped out a little bit because of the age difference. So it was a couple things that was kind of weird. But all in all, I heard it wasn't bad.
Yeah, um that Rogue and Magneto art that kind of took it took me by surprise because I follow comics a little bit, but I'm like a casual comic, so I
Yeah,
knew about Rogue and Magneto, but kind of messed up how they did my boy Envy, because he
yeah.
he has a similar story, to a lot of guys can relate to,
Mm.
that one girl that he's after, and she just ain't, she always got an excuse, but it's
The real unwoke, say, "Damn, spoiler alert!" Talking about I'm cold for that. Man, listen, Neil, bro, that show can't. Man, if you ain't seen it by now, dog, like,
yeah,
you waiting on,
yeah,
man. I can see if it just happened like last night or something, but man, if you want to watch it, you should have been watched it, man. So don't get mad at me, bro. That's my boy Neil. He capping. He probably done seen it
yeah.
already.
Yeah, Neil my people too. I done collab with him once or twice,
Hmm.
but yeah,
Yeah.
good people.
Mhm.
But yeah, man. So what prompted me to to ask you to to do this with me is I think that people have a hard time understanding language and
Mhm.
communication. So
Mhm.
and I think that a lot of people are just not grounded. They're not really grounded in what they believe because when I use the word believe or faith, I'm talking about a deep-seated conviction in
Mhm.
something. And if you're convinced of something, then you're going to be able to coherently explain it.
Mhm.
And you know, this quote unquote space we're in, we have a lot of people that say they have conviction or faith in or belief in something, but I don't really think that's what it is. I think it's just an aversion to what's going on. They don't
Mhm.
like what's going on, so they're just like, okay, let me switch all the way over here. And
Mhm.
there's some steps that you have to take to really go to one side or another. And and I say that, just with some compassion because I've come to the realization that we were born into a paradigm of lies
Mhm.
from top to bottom. Because for me, my thing was my thing all my life has just been the Bible.
Mhm.
Trying to understand the Bible, trying to live and abide by it and all that. So when I started really reading it and I started realizing, I'm like, well, the Bible's saying something that I wasn't told.
Mhm.
So then I keep going. I dive deeper and deeper, and I'm finding out that I was indoctrinated into lies, pretty much.
Mhm.
And people, and I'm not even upset about it because people can only go as far as they're led. So whoever led me was led by somebody else.
Mhm.
But I think that we're at a point in history to where all the information is there, so every man has to do his due diligence to really get informed about something
Mhm.
because you can only believe something according to information. So
Mhm.
when I first saw your content and you were just chopping stuff down, I was just like, man, I was I was like, I'm like, this is what the people been looking for because like, you know, I'm big on etymology. Etymology is like a time machine,
Right.
So if you know the history of words and how they're constructed and all that, then it kind of shapes your reality. So when you were just cutting up Martin Luther King, because like 10 years ago, I had came across COINTELPRO
Mhm.
and how he was a serial adulterer or a fornicator, and and just a horrendous person. I was like, yeah, Martin Luther King is bad, but power to the people anyway. You know, so
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
I really it didn't hit home because I didn't understand. I didn't understand Marxism and
Yeah, that's right.
know, how insidious it is and how it plays on the emotions or the intentions of goodwill towards men. You know,
That's right.
it exploits that, you know, so basically I'm saying like Marxism exploits Christianity to a sense, you know,
Oh yeah.
and what it does is it will take something out of its context
Mm-hmm.
and it will take it as a doctrine, you know,
Mm-hmm.
so you know that goes back to you know what you know my thing because when you were talking about Israel Palestine, you weren't talking about Israel and Palestine.
Mm-hmm.
You weren't, you know, that's not what you were talking about. You were talking about Western hegemony versus
Mm-hmm.
um
Yeah.
Sharia law, whatever they call it.
Sure. Yeah. Sharia or yeah.
You know, that's what you were talking about.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, people, you know, then you got Christians in one faction saying, you know, oh man, you know, he's advocating for Israel and Israel is a corrupt state. And then you got people on the other hand saying, oh, he wants Hamas to win. And I'm like, no, y'all are not listening. That's not what he's saying. He's not saying that at all. You know, he's talking about the fall of civilization as we know it. And,
Yeah.
you know, that kind of brought me back to, you know, what I've been studying for the last 2.5 years. You know, 2.5 years ago, you know, well, it was really like in 2021. You know, you know, all the stuff was going on in society and in the world. And, you know, we had all this talk about, you know, the end times are here and, you know, George Soros is going to take over and the World Economic Forum and this, that, and the other. Then they're going to start putting chips in people, you know, so I became really nihilistic
Yeah.
because,
I
you
get
know,
it.
I already had, you know, the knowledge of or the narrative. I had the narrative of, you know, what the Bible's saying and, you know, how we're going to come to an end in history. And, you know, I was just like, you know what, this world sucks anyway, let it burn.
Right.
Then I started reading the Bible again. And, you know, you know, I don't know if, you know, for anybody watching, you know, I teach, well, I don't teach, but like I'm like a private teacher for you know, chemistry, biochemistry, organic chemistry, molecular biology, and all that. And the reason why people don't understand these topics is not because it's hard, it's because they don't understand language.
Mm-hmm.
They can't read, you know, they don't read carefully. And so when I was reading the Bible, you know, I you know, I remember that verse, you know, man shall not live by bread alone, but every word that proceeds out the mouth of God shall man live. So, you know, if every word from God is important, then I was just like, okay, I need to really break down every word and read it honestly. So when I turned to Revelation, you know, I was like, you know, the opening verse is the revelation of Jesus Christ that God gave onto him to show his servants the things that must quickly come to pass. And I was like, quickly, you know, that word quickly, I've read that verse for years. And
Mm-hmm.
for some reason, that word quickly stood out. And I was just like, okay, I need to, if I'm gonna read this honestly, I need to
Mm-hmm.
backtrack a little bit. So I started reading the Old Testament, and you know, I got into Daniel's prophecy about you know the end, and you know the angel had told Daniel, he said, seal up the prophecy to the end, you know, and you know he was talking about a resurrection that's going to take place. And then at the end of Revelation, you have the angel telling John, he said, seal not up the prophecy for the time is at hand. So man,
Mm-hmm.
that, you know, man, I went down a rabbit hole, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So I
Okay.
started, you know, I got introduced to eschatology, and
Okay.
then I started, you know, reading the Old Testament, and I had to go back to the promises that, you know, God set forth.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just like, man, this is not adding up to what I was taught. And,
Okay.
you know, once you start interpreting things in its proper context, everything starts making sense. So,
Mm,
just, for me, you know, the reason I'm saying this is like everybody wants to be on the right side morally. Um, I remember a show y'all did on Cutting Through the Culture. You had said that, you would be a fool to think that these people don't really in their hearts believe that they're doing the right thing. And that
right.
resonated with me because I was just like, that's
Yeah.
they believe with all their heart that they are doing the will of righteousness. And
Yeah, they do.
you have to have a proper interpretation of what's already been spoken by God. So when we start talking about support Israel this, support Israel that from a Christian perspective, I reject that because and the reason I reject it based on the narrative. The narrative is they're God's chosen people, so we have to support them based on that, and that is not what the Bible says. So with that out the way, it was easy. It was easier for me to hear what you were saying
Mm.
because you kept saying that I'm not coming from a theological perspective. You kept saying that, and people kept ignoring you, and I was just
Right.
I need maybe if I
Well,
work with maybe our messages will complement each other so people can see
well,
the full picture.
let me let me jump in and try to explain. I was jotting down a few things as I was listening to you talk. Yeah, bro, I appreciate it, man. 'Cause I remember when I first came across you on Instagram, and you had tagged me in a post. You had tagged me in it was a story or something. I can't remember what it was, and you said something to the effect of, "This guy here is by far." The best YouTuber, the best content creator on YouTube. This is my favorite guy. And I had never, heard anybody, say anything so complimentary of me. So that really, I was really taken aback by that. So I appreciate it. I remember I reposted it, you know what I mean? Because, people like to hear nice things said about them. And so that's when I first became aware of you. So I just want to say again, man, I appreciate the the love and respect and vice versa, man. For sure. You talked about briefly. Just want to touch on MLK. You talked about his adultery, and for me, and I did, of course, I did a YouTube. I did a YouTube video on MLK. I like to do things in long form because that's just my style. I like to really go deep into things, and I like to tackle topics that really, if I were being fair, would you know amount to an entire college semester worth of information that I try to like cram into a 2-3 hour video. And then if need be, I'll come back and do follow-ups. But you talked about when you came across COINTELPRO. um of course, there are probably a multitude of information out there that deals with COINTELPRO, but the definitive COINTELPRO work is a book referred to as the COINTELPRO Papers. If I forgot, I'm trying to remember the author off the top of my head, and I'm forgetting. But anyway, yeah, I have a copy of that book myself. And so yeah, so when you read about the COINTELPRO papers, of course, it's told from the perspective, of course, that the FBI was wrong in what they were doing. They were wrong in their spying, particularly on the civil rights movement. And you have these allegations about Dr. King's communism being used as a pretense to spy on him, as a kind of pretext to spy on him. And so this is those who defend King's communism, because of course much of what we get when we discuss Dr. Martin Luther King and the other side of him, Ward Churchill, thank you, the other side of MLK. That's what you hear about. You hear about his personal life. And you say, well, the FBI was using the allegation of communism to spy on King so that they can get dirt on him in an attempt to ruin his reputation. But now, we know, and it's not so much that now we know. I'm saying that, we are, people in the now are beginning to rediscover what peoples knew about MLK back then, which was that he, was in fact a doctrinaire, a Marxist. He was never a member, as far as my research has shown me, he was never a member of the Communist Party proper. But he certainly did surround himself with communists, and he utilized the tactics, the activism tactics that were taught to him by members of the Communist Party and fellow travelers alike. And so, yeah, Dr. King was known. See, this is the thing that people really need to hone in on when discussing King. I mean, yes, if you profess to be a man of the cloth, and here you are behind the scenes and you're doing all these untoward things, of course that's news. But just to kind of deal with Dr. King on a more broad, on a more political, I guess you can call it, a level, you really get to, because people say, well, everybody sins, everyone has skeletons in their closet, right? We all fall short. But it's one thing to fall short. It's one thing to sin, and then there's another thing, of course, to engage in a kind of long, well planned out, well thought out, protracted effort to deceive and to try and convince the masses that you are in fact coming on behalf of the Word of God, and you are a representative of Christ. When in fact you are a purveyor of the social gospel. And of course, this is why everyone knows Martin was born Michael, but his name was, of course, changed to Martin after the father of Protestantism, Martin Luther. Because and Chad Jackson just had a video recently where he talked about this, where Dr. King's father, Dr. King Sr., wanted to sort of model his religious life after Martin Luther, not insofar as he wanted to kind of walk in the same faith and be this example of true Protestantism as Martin Luther had intended. No, he really appreciated Martin Luther for the revolutionary aspect of the whole movement and the whole Reformation process, to kind of take this authority, take the ecclesiastical authority away from the Catholic Church, who had, in the eyes of many peoples across Europe, had by that time grown immensely corrupt. And that's a totally separate issue, because the Catholic Church, especially if you listen to a lot of Catholic apologetics when it comes to their critiques of Protestantism, many Catholics are correct in what they foresaw with the rise of Protestantism, because the Catholic Church isn't any more corrupt, that's what I'm going to say. The Catholic Church isn't any more corrupt than the so-called Protestant Church, and we may get into that at a point. But again, the whole point of MLK is to look at what he actually believed, and if that does in fact align with the scriptures. And like you and I know by now, of course, that it doesn't. And I appreciate, and I'm not done with this whole Judaism or Israel, should I say, and Palestine, and the whole question of Zionism. It's taken me a while, aside from the fact that trying to balance my personal life is difficult, because there's a lot of information that I pack into my my videos. But just dealing with some personal things, because I need a new podcast studio to go and record in, because my old guy shut down shop, and so I'm just kind of shopping around to figure out how I can get this information out, because I got part 2 on the way. But in the first installment, I know you probably watched it by now, but like I say, in the beginning, I dealt with this whole question of populism and what exactly is it. And and I say I just touched on it, but I didn't really go in depth, because what we have, particularly in America today, right? When you talk about the political spectrum, we're talking left, right. And this is why I broached the subject of populism, because you are beginning to see a kind of a coalition between the right and the left in their animosity toward the state of Israel. And of course, when we are swept up at times in these this kind of populist fervor, when we're caught up in these various movements, sometimes we can lose moral clarity because, of course, the consensus does not always equate to right. And of course, this is something that even Alexis de Tocqueville warned Americans of how the age of enlightenment and this kind of newly sort of projected primacy of reason over revelation could lead to man succumbing more so to the opinions of the mob, because of course the clergy and the aristocracy had lost by and large, their authority. And so, in order to have a social cohesion, in order to have a society, you do have to have some semblance of a social cohesion, some semblance of agreement. And so, this is where democracy comes in. And so, what can eventually happen is we can kind of give up. We can substitute one form of I guess, conformity, compulsion, or tyranny for another, which is, of course, the tyranny of the mob. And so this is what I want to kind of warn people of, because just because an opinion is popular doesn't mean that it is correct. Now, when I went into and someone posed a question of me to me, that do I know who Anton Daniels is? I know who Anton Daniels is. I don't know him personally because I think he's from Detroit. I don't know him personally. I've watched it. I've seen him on YouTube. I watched a couple of his videos. He's a bright guy, smart. I find him entertaining. He's funny. But that's as far as it goes. I don't know him all that well. I've watched some of his videos, and I've seen some of the him collaborating, or he'll do videos where he's on these panels and there are multiple people talking. And me personally, as far as my taste, I don't like to watch videos when there are 5, 6, 7, 8 people, everyone talking, because that's just because the reality is that very few people, and I hate this, I'm not trying to sound mean, but very few people are that interesting. You got a lot of folks who just have a camera, seriously, and they just want to say, well, YouTube and podcasting is the thing now, and so I have an opinion. That sounds fun. Let me go online and give my opinion. Let me go online and enter into a conversation. And people, time is valuable, right? It's one of the most valuable, if not the most valuable resource that we have. And it's one of those things that you can't get back. And so I don't really waste my time listening to a lot of people who just, quite frankly, aren't that interesting, or who just aren't that smart. I'm sorry. And that's not to say that Anton Daniels is not a smart man. He has his lane. He's more so considered one of those manosphere red pill guys. But yeah, that's just it. I know who he is, but I can't say that I know a ton about him. I don't have anything bad to say about him, but I do know who he is. And on that, and this is my last thing I want to say. And on that topic about defending Israel because the Jews are God's chosen people. Again, you say I reject that, right? And even I said, in the video that I did, that I'm not coming from some standpoint of, well, God instructed us to protect Israel at all costs, or protect Jews at all costs. That's not the position that I was. That's not where I was coming from. And you summed it up brilliantly. When you talked about Western hegemony versus something else, versus everything else, because the fact of the matter is that Western civilization isn't just solely about Christianity. I know that Christianity, of course, is a major aspect of it. But again, in many respects, Christianity was a continuation, if you will, of the ideas that were prevalent during the or these ideas were prevalent in the pagan world. You see, we have these ideas, and again, it goes back to something you talked about. When people use words, they don't really understand words. They don't really know what words mean. They just throw them around, and so now we exist in this sort of, not so much sort of, but we are in fact in this new sort of paradigm, right? We are how does it say, anadomani, right? After death, or after Christ, we are in the age of Christ, after the death of Christ. And so now everything is different in the eyes of some folk. And so when we think about the pagan world, the kind of pre-Christian world, we automatically kind of use the term pagan as a sort of pejorative, if you will, to say, well, the pagan peoples were wicked and so on and so forth. And in some respects, maybe that criticism, is, in fact, or that characterization of the pagan world is justified. But in some respects, it is not, because in many respects, with the entire Abrahamic tradition, brought forth a fulfillment of a lot of the ideas that that existed, prior to the sort of era, as they call it, of revealed truth. I'll give you one example. Um, the Greek, and mind you, at that time, philosophy and science were sort of like one and the same. There was no kind of deviation. This thing would come about much later, where you began to see this new embrace when we talk about nature, for example. And this is, when you hear about the Enlightenment philosophers like John Locke and Emmanuel. When you hear these names, right, they always talk about natural philosophy, man knowing nature, understanding nature. And from there, you begin to see this sort of divergence between the so-called liberal arts or the liberal sciences and the natural sciences. And I think that has done a number on Western thought in a negative way. But see, going back to what I was saying, I think of men like Thales. Thales was the first man in recorded history to accurately predict a solar eclipse, and he did so right based upon mathematic principles and these sorts of things, and he was able to accurately predict a solar eclipse. And what that meant to Thales and many others was, for the first time, they began to realize that the mind of man, based upon his own faculties, could understand things. Terrestrial man, corporeal man, could understand the mind and the ways of the gods. Of course, you're talking about the celestial realm. It was the realm of the gods. And so what that told Thales is that, well, first and foremost, that the earth, or the world of the universe, however they perceived of the quote unquote universe. I mean, I understand that their whole conception of astronomy and the movement of the heavenly bodies was different, than ours, I guess, post Copernicus. But my point is that he realized that the universe has order, and if it has order, it must have some sort of intent. Now, of course, there was another question that was being bandied about amongst the ancients, and that was, of course, what was in fact the first cause of what they called motion, right? I.e., well, we would ask the question. We would say, well, who created the universe? They would pontificate upon these things, but they first realized that if man can ascertain the things of the gods, then man too must exist within some kind of larger framework that must have some sort of meaning or some kind of purpose. Even Heraclitus, I think he was the first man on record to postulate that perhaps the universe is the product of a source or some sort of creator that exists outside of the realm of space and time. Even once Christ did come into the world, died and was crucified and rose again, and so on and so forth, and then the Christian church was born, and the rest is history. A lot of the early church fathers, say men like Justin Martyr, believe that certain men, such as Socrates and Plato, were and may have in fact been divinely inspired, because even prior to they had these ideas, a lot of these Platonic and Aristotelian ideas lined up. In fact, with what we would find out was true of the divine and was in fact true of nature. And so Thales, this whole idea was, if we can study nature, we can study the known somehow, or we may be able to, in fact, discover the unknown. And so they began to realize and understand that the world, the universe is not random. This is not this, random movement, star, that we are not the products of chance. Something had to put this thing in order. Okay. And so aside from that, because we do get some of our spiritual traditions from classical Greece, but more importantly than anything else, is that is where we in fact derive our political system. And so our political system, the first kind of examples that we see of democracy, of ideas of representative government, so on and so forth, we get those ideas from the Greeks. Now, our kind of moral traditions, if you will, was lent to us, or was given to us, bestowed upon us by way of Jerusalem. And then when you encapsulate all of that from a political point of view, those ideas, the ideas of Greece and Jerusalem, were brought forth widely into the world by way of the Roman Empire. And so when we talk about Western civilization, we're talking about a whole heap, a whole slew of things. And within the context of what we call Western civilization exists, of course, not just Christianity, but Judaism and Islam and so on and so forth. Again, like I mentioned before when I was on YouTube, is that this is not a question of, salvation and who, in fact, is worshiping God in the correct way. It's more so about if you are in fact in favor of the word of Christ, the word of Christianity spreading, then you have to protect I guess it's fair to call it, the kind of political and social framework that allows for the open expression of that which we as Christians consider to be the good news. And so this is not so much a territorial dispute or a dispute over, well, who in fact is God's chosen people, Jew, Gentile, and so on and so forth. That's not the question. The question is that here in the West, we are faced with this kind of a partnership, this kind of two-prong attack between this kind of idea of liberationist Islam and this whole kind of secular globalist Marxian movement to kind of put down the free world. And that's in fact what we're dealing with. And I wanted to do what I wanted to do and tackle in that video, and that was a video that was more so speaking to conservatives, because there is a ton of just lazy understanding about the Jewish peoples, their role in the academy, and why in fact there always seems to be a Jew behind every curtain when you're talking about these communist movements in the United States and abroad. And so I wanted to unpack that, kind of go into the origins of socialism or socialist Zionism and so on. But again, that was just kind of like the first part of I don't know how many installments it's going to take for me to really lay this entire thing out, but it's going to take a while. But I'm glad you kind of understood what I was what I was getting to, because Islam, of course, means to make enemies of us all, of all non-Muslims, and that's just the way it is.
Yeah, and it's so it's funny what you were saying. Not funny, but it's so profound what you were saying about some of these ideas we get in our tradition, kind of root from quote unquote paganism.
Mm,
Um, just the whole thought process of the West, it does come from, that when Alexander, he took over that region, and
hmm
you know,
Yeah.
at the time of Christ, the Romans were in power, and they were
Mhm.
just, they had gotten they had came from a tradition of those Greeks,
Yeah.
you know.
Right.
So
Yeah.
a lot of the things we sort of believe culturally did
hmm
come from that. But
hmm
it's like, like I said, for me, my thing is just understanding the scriptures, and this it all goes back to the eschaton, because
Mm.
when we talk about what was Jesus's mission, what did he come to do, what was the prevailing message and theme, throughout all the old, what we call the Old Testament. I think that we're wholly misinterpreting it, and if I'm correct in my conclusion, then the whole, and this man, and I got some Muslim friends, but this is, I just gotta
Well,
keep it funky. I gotta keep it.
well,
So what?
yeah, no, I was gonna say you're right. I mean, and also, I mean, when you look at the Old Testament, a lot of people don't look. I mean, they don't read the Quran. They don't study or just first various verses and chapters in the Quran. And see, and this is some of the information that I plan on putting in my upcoming YouTube videos. But according to the Quran, Islam attempts to just usurp and consume, if you will, the entire Abrahamic, the entire Hebrew tradition. Because even within the Quran itself, of course, it states that Abraham was not in fact Jewish.
Wasn't.
Abraham was in fact a Muslim. This is the claim of the Quran. Now I know you kind of turn your head and you're saying, "Wait a minute, are you serious?" Yes, that's the claim of the
Yeah.
Quran. And so when you look at Christianity and Judaism, of course, Christianity and Judaism are the only two religions in the world that share a holy book in common, which is of course the Old Testament. But the Quran has a totally different perspective and a totally different understanding of the quote unquote Old Testament, which of course they believe was corrupted by both Jew and Christian in order to deceive the believer, or to get would be true believers not to believe upon the true and living God Allah. So it's a totally different. And so Jews and Christians, and so you have on the one hand, again, and I try not to make this solely theological, like I always tell people, because I will openly admit that I don't know the Bible as well as someone else does. But what I can tell you is that for all of the trials and tribulations between Jews and Christians that have gone on for centuries, and let's be clear about it. It doesn't matter if, well, Christians accept Christ and Jews do not. There have been times throughout the Middle Ages where Jews were, in fact, persecuted by Christians. And this is just a fact. And people say, well, Jews are always crying victim, and there's always a point in time, no matter what historical epoch you're talking about, Jewish people are always claiming that they've been oppressed and so on and so forth. Again, maybe we'll get to that later on as well. But there have been various times, particularly recently, where Jews and Christians have been able to, more so, for example, than the Jews and their relationship with Islam, figure out a way to coexist. And I think that has a lot to do with, again, just the entire ethos and logos and pathos of the Western tradition is what made this, possible. This is why, again, going back to, say, for example, the 1800s, why the Great Britain, the British Empire, led the world in a lot of the kind of moral revolutions that led to a lot of institutional changes that have gone on to, in the minds and the eyes of many people, make the world a better place. When it comes to fighting against slavery and so on. I'm forgetting who it was. I'm trying to remember. I can give me a second. I can think of it. But there was one famous person said of the English once upon a time that let not the English forget that it is they who taught the world how to live. Great Britain, and figuratively speaking, I mean, literally, there's some truth to that. There's some weight to that, because Great Britain literally taught the world how to live. And so when you look at Jews and Christians, it's like, yeah, we got our own little thing over here. But of course, in the face of Islam, perhaps the Jew and the Christian should come together and jointly realize that there is a greater enemy on the horizon to both Jew and Christian, to both Jew and Gentile, of course, and that is the Mohammedan, that is the Islamist, that is the non, so we always have to qualify our words by saying that I have Muslim friends. I'm not saying Muslims aren't good people. Of course, I know Muslims as well. And of course, those are your more kind of westernized Muslims that have, right, leaned into a lot of the cultural mores that define the West that are not solely restricted to the realm of the sacred. But Islam as a whole poses a huge threat to the West in that it poses a huge threat to both Christian and Jew alike. And that is something that I think a lot of so-called populists of today are losing sight of.
Yeah, what I had said that because too many times when we say things that are contrary to what somebody holds as true,
Mhm.
that person feels attacked. They feel like you're attacking them, and
Right.
at the end of the day, I got love for the people that I love, so
Yeah.
I don't want to come across as jagged, but I got to keep it funky. Like my conscience is accountable to God and not man.
Right.
And what I say is Islam is a thing because Christians do not know their Bible. Okay, and this is why I say that. People can say something. They can say whatever, and there has to be context to properly interpret it. When somebody says Abraham was not a Jew, technically he was not.
Mm.
He was actually the father of
Right.
the one we call Judah. So
Right.
the Jews were not around when Abraham was walking with God. But see that the thing about that is the fact that Abraham was not a Jew and God was working with him. You got to look at the promises that God gave to Abraham. He said, through your seed, that all the families of the earth will be blessed. So when we talk about covenants, a covenant God made with who and what does it mean? Christianity is a fulfillment of the covenant that God made with Abraham. And that's
Right. That's the way Christians.
I think that's what Christians are failing to understand, because when God says that through your seed all the nations and all the families of the earth are going to be blessed, and I'm gonna bless everything that you do, and all that, the faith, that's what we call the faith. It went from Abraham all the way to Jesus Christ, and that's what we inherited. So
Right.
when Paul talks about the faith of Jesus Christ, you saw it in the Old Testament. That's why the Bible says Abraham is the father of us. Is the father of the faith. So context is everything when somebody's talking. So when the Muslim says that Abraham was not a Jew, technically they're right, but even
But
with
yeah.
that. And then they say Abraham was a Muslim. Well, the thing is, okay, now you got to ask yourself, what is a Muslim? According to the Arabic, it's one that submits to the will of God. So technically, they're correct. But in what context are you using it in? You know,
Right. And
because we're just talking about God and Abraham. Yeah, but see, the issue is you come to Muhammad, and the Bible in Galatians says if there's anybody else, man or angel, that preaches another gospel which there is not, call him accursed. Okay, so the word is that Abraham got this revelation from the angel Gabriel, but Paul had already spoken. Paul was an apostle inspired by God. He has said, if another gospel comes on to you from man or an angel, you
Mhm.
call that man or angel accursed. So
Mhm.
it's like we're over here placating to other people's worldview when the Bible clearly tells us call them accursed. You know,
Hmm.
and so that's and you know, I'm coming off as what I said. You know, it may be kind of strong or heavy, but look, I'm just relaying the message what the Bible says. You know,
Yeah.
if I'm wrong, feel
Hmm.
free to reprove me. You know, and I tell people that all the time. If I'm wrong, feel free to reprove me, but it better be from the Word of God. It
Right.
can't just be according to your opinion.
Right. But we'll see. And I'm trying. I'm laughing. I'm listening to you. Oh, and I'm laughing at this Leandra Watts person in her comments. And the last one is what really got me. The free Malachi Z York. Okay. Then again, you know, she's putting all this stuff in the chat. She's saying all these things as if you and I have never heard them. You know, I've done this for the greater part of my life. You know, it's going around talking about the Bible is the oh my bad, I'm sorry, bro. Saying that the Bible is the book of the Son. You know, like that's some kind of revelatory thing, as if you know I've never heard that before. Like oh, like you've never heard that before. Of course, you know that's old hat. You know that the Bible is the book of the Son, and Jesus, of course, his life is the you know the movement of the Son throughout the you know celestial sphere, sort of personified, and so on and so forth. I mean, we heard these things, and not only have we heard these things. I mean, me personally, I can speak for myself that you know I studied that theory vigorously, not just okay, I heard it in passing, and so there it is. But no, I studied that theory intensely because I used to believe that. So you're not saying anything that none of us have ever heard, and you're going around talking about Freemasons and all this other stuff. Again, I think that goes back to a lot of things that you talked about. Oh, in the beginning, you know, with this kind of this kind of embrace in the you know this kind of nihilism, where you get to the point where you know you don't really anyway, let me not. I'll just leave that alone 'cause I don't want to get too sidetracked by those comments that I don't feel have any bearing or weight on what it is that we're talking about here and now. Though I do appreciate it, the engagement. Like you said, the point and the reason why they're saying it, of course, is to suggest that you know the whole history of everything again, beginning from Abraham and going down through the line of you know David and on to Jesus and so on. That of course you know that all of these men, all of the great prophets in the Bible were of course were Muslim. All right. And again, it talks about a lot of other things as well in the Quran. And again, I myself, like I said, I'm going to get to that when I do some things on my own YouTube channel. I don't want to give too much away too soon. But you know, when for me, as I mentioned, when I talk about these things, you know, when you think about again that particular region of the world, you know, ancient Judea, Samaria, the Holy Land, so on and so forth. Uh, you know, human beings, you know, move about the face of the earth. Civilizations rise, civilizations fall. Boundaries are defined and then subsequently redefined, and so on and so forth. And so there have been a multitude of changes, right? So, you know, as it relates to that particular region of the world, the Middle East, the Near East, so on and so forth. And then once upon a time, it may have been, you know, under Roman dictates, and then for a time it was under Byzantine dictates, and then it was under the dictates of the Ottoman Empire, and what have you. And now, of course, and so the face of the earth it changes. And so when I talk about it, you know, when I talk about the issue of Israel and Palestine, again, for me, that's the point of view that I'm coming from. I look at it from that point of view and from that point of view alone. And again, I know that there is something to say about how the Bible or what the Bible instructs true believers, right? Regardless, I don't know, depending upon your religious affiliation, you might have a different perspective on what you think or who you think a true believer constitutes. But again, you know, God and his relationship to Israel or God and his relationship to Jewish people, you know, and what God has, I guess, planned for Israel as far as any sort of end time prophecy or whatever the case may be. I don't know. I just look at it from as a faithful Christian, I look at it as okay. When I look at the Bible, I look okay. What is it that I need to do as an individual in order to find grace and salvation and redemption and so on and so forth? How is it that how should I go about, the business of protecting myself from God's wrath, right? How do I save my soul? I don't make these grandiose predictions of what's to come because me personally, I don't think I have I just don't think I know that. Well, I know I don't know that, right? And so I don't touch that. But in terms of just from a political point of view and from a military point of view and so on. That's the way I look at it, right? And who rightfully owns the land and who did this and who did that. That's the way I look at it. I look at it from that particular standpoint, that particular point of view, and that's just it for me. And I know I may be overly simplifying it,
No, you're not.
uh,
You're
but
not.
that's just the way I look
You're
at it.
not overly simplifying it because you're doing what a lot of people should do. You're
Right.
I don't want this to come as an insult, but you're staying in your lane.
Yeah. No, I ain't no insult, none taken, bro.
You know,
None taken.
because I've heard you say, and it's like people just don't listen.
Yeah.
Like this man clearly is saying this is not a theological discussion. I'm not coming from a biblical discussion. He's like clearly he's like that's not my wheelhouse. I have to
That's
outsource that to
I'll
somebody
push
else.
that.
And
You
then
know,
they keep trying to bring it back into this conversation. I'm like, that's not what this man is talking about.
because
You have to deal with what is being spoken about.
here's the thing. Oh, when people say that well Christians have has no business involving in this, or Christians shouldn't be doing this, and Christians shouldn't be doing that. And it's funny because they use that, especially a lot of these sort of new breed populist conservatives. Say, for example, someone like she's becoming like the poster person or the poster woman for this particular point of view, and that being Candace Owens. And
Well,
I'm going to, Candace Owens is, and I see you shaking your head, like, because I would be a bit hesitant to voice my true opinions about Candace Owens on a joint live stream because I don't want anyone to conflate my opinion with yours or to associate what I say with you. Because my opinions about Candace Owens is probably very controversial. I'll just say I'm not very fond of her. I'll just leave it at that. But when people make this, when people say that, well, as a Christian, such and so forth, that's bad faith. And I know that it's bad faith because I have historical reference points that speaks to that. Because it's not simply about, well, what should a Christian or a nation that professes to be a Christian nation, how should we go about the business of dealing with the state of Israel? No, it's about how should a self-professed Christian nation go about the business of war in general. Because this whole question about Christianity or Christians and how Christians should approach this idea of geopolitical conflict, particularly as it involves war. Christianity and blessed are the peacemakers was the slogan of the Christian left, as they called it, back during the times of World War II, when Christianity was used as a justification for the United States not to enter into World War II. You fast forward, you had these same entities on the progressive Christian left that use the exact same argument to suggest that we as Americans shouldn't involve ourselves in French Indochina. And so to go back to a World War II, this is when, again, under, or say, for example, a man like Charles Lindbergh, who was at the forefront of the America First movement of the 1930s, didn't want the United States to get involved in trying to protect Europe from Hitler's war machine. And so this is always being kind of used. So basically, Christianity, and my boy Neil made the point, pretty much is that Christians, we should be nice. Christians don't believe in war. Christians are anti-war, and so on and so forth. And so this is how this is being played up. This is how this is being used as some kind of a justification, so some kind of ideological justification for this anti-war posture. And I don't know if the Bible anywhere in the New Testament Christianity does it align with that particular point of view. To me, that's just a bad faith argument, because war is not a matter of ideology. Of course, war is a matter of prudence. I say it all the time. Okay, but somebody in the comment section said about war or religion divides people, and that's what Leandra said. Leandre.
I ain't worried.
Uh,
I'm ignoring this.
and, yeah, man, I'm gonna just see this is. I mean, he keep giving his opinion. People can detract, and I've people have said a lot of mean things to me, and I'm sure people have said a lot of mean things to you. He's not being mean; he's just voicing his opinion, and I respect that. I just would have to disagree. I
Yeah,
mean, of course, religion does divide people. On its face, that's true, but it's a little bit deeper than that. But again, when you look at just from the days of the from the Crusades, from the final clash in the late 15th century between the Byzantine Empire and the Ottoman Empire, right? The reign of the Ottoman Empire over the region of what we call Palestine, which comprises the state of Israel today. The Ottoman Empire's defeat in World War II. We have the Balfour Declaration and the mandate for Palestine when the Palestinian region was handed over to the British Empire by the League of Nations, and they went about creating an exclusive state for the Jewish peoples who were being chased out of nearly every country across Europe, thanks in large part to the effects of the Enlightenment that gave rise to a lot of ideas, this kind of newfound sense of nationalism that began to spread all across Europe, which, if you look at the year of 1830, it's called the year of the Revolution. This is when, Greek became a state apart from the Ottoman Empire around about that period of time. And so that's what happens when you lose a war. When the Turks, when you lose, and that's just that. No one sitting up here crying the moody blues over the so-called Palestinian peoples had an issue when the Palestinian peoples, such as they were, because there were no Palestinian people at the time, when they were living under the dictates or the authority of the Turkish Empire. No one had anything to say about it. But again, what this all plays into, it plays into this whole social justice and Islam perspective that is in line with this the whole critical race theory, the entire critical race narrative. It all goes underneath that entire umbrella, this whole anti-colonial, anti-imperialist project in order to push back. In order to push back the West, and of course, Islam is being used as a handmaiden to accomplish this.
yeah, yeah, yeah. First off, Candace Owens ain't my chick, so you can say whatever you want about
Okay,
her.
hold on, bro. Hold on, bro. Hold on, bro. Hold on.
You know. All right, while he's gone, I just want to thank everybody for watching. I appreciate it. There's like 7 billion people allegedly in the world, and you watching us cook, so I appreciate that for sure, for sure.
My
You know,
bad, bro. My bad. Children.
yeah, nah, that's all good. Family first. Nah, but you know, I mean, with me, anybody can get it. All these people that are in mainstream, media, and she is mainstream media. She's not
Right.
all media. She is mainstream.
Mhm.
Anybody can get it. I don't. These are just people. And
Mhm.
with people comes ideas, and with ideas come, contrarians and whatever, and opposing ideas. I have my ideas too. So.
Right.
Candace Owens, she's just, she's palatable. because she says things in a manner to where it has mass appeal, except to the shade room contingent of society, and
Right.
all those niggas that used to eat glue when they were children.
Right, right,
And,
right.
I don't,
Mhm.
Candace Owens, she, to have such a drastic change in perspective, I don't, like I said, it takes a while to get to, where you are. It's a journey. You can't just watch Trump and be like, oh, I'm
Yeah,
Republican now. Like
exactly.
it doesn't work like that.
It don't
And
work.
any, and for people to just, she says some things, and everybody says some things that are right and true. But
Right.
it's not the things that you say that are true that make the difference. It's the things that you say that are not true that make the
Mhm.
difference, because the difference between good and evil is always subtle. That's why they say the devil is
Right.
in the details.
Yeah.
But
And it's, go ahead,
no,
Ryan.
what I
Cut
was
you off.
saying is like Candace Owens doesn't she doesn't know scripture.
No,
Um,
she doesn't.
for the Bible talks about God's dominion being like a kingdom, right?
Mhm.
And I don't know about anybody else, but just any kingdom throughout history is out for conquest, or else you get,
Exactly. Unless you are, that's right, or else you get conquered. And
so
this
it's
is the
like,
thing.
when we talk about war and stuff like that, and this is one of my main knocks against just modern day Christians, and I just use that term just usually because I don't anybody can understand it, but
Mhm.
we have this delineation between the Old Testament and the New Testament, and there is not. God's word is God's word.
Forever. Yes,
The
right.
whole
Same
Old
God.
Testament, it's the same God the
It's
whole
the same
time.
God.
So it's not
Same
like he
God.
said something one time and then he's like, oh, well, that's not what I really mean. No, it's there was an account, and I post Bible verses on my profile all the time, and people probably think it's just random, but
Hmm.
I posted the other day. There was an account in Israel where Ahab was a wicked king. He was married to an evil woman, Jezebel, and she was killing the prophets of God. And you know Israel was so close to being taken over, but God had to remind the prophet Elijah. He's like, look, I know it seems messed up, but don't worry. I have 7,000 people that have not bowed to Baal and submitted to him. So he said, I want you to go anoint Jehu, the king of Israel. So
Hmm.
Jehu's one of my favorite guys in the Bible because when he got the anointing, he went after it like right there, right then and there. So he was coming to kill Jezebel, and
Hmm.
one of Jezebel's one of Ahab's sons, he sent somebody out to go meet him, and he said, "Do you come with peace?" And Jehu said, "What do you have to do with peace? Get away from me." So he went back to his master. His master sent somebody else. He said, "Do you come peacefully?" And Jehu said, "What do you know about peace? Like, go on about your business." And then
Hmm.
Ahab's son came and he said, "Is it peace?" And Jehu said, "What is peace as long as your mother Jezebel and her whoredoms are many in the land?" And the Ahab's son, he ran in terror, and Jehu got his bow and arrow and shot him in the chest.
Hmm.
So he was coming to conquer, to set things straight. So when we talk about war and all this, and there's no peace as long as evil is reigning. So
That's right.
as the right, as the righteous remnant of society, or whatever you want to call us,
Hmm.
we have a duty to put down wicked devices. And this is my another critique of the church and the stewards of the church. This thing about just placating to everything. Every war is first starts off with an idea. So
Yeah.
you give, and this country is very ripe for for just any kind of ideologies because we're free. And then you have this thing about the First Amendment. So when you just give up ground, and when I say giving up ground, that ground is the minds of the hearts of people. When you just give that up, right, you are basically laying down because I don't know any war, any king where you just kindly give up land and then it's all good. You give
Right.
up land, they're either going to when you give things up, they're either going to force you to bow to them or they'll kill you. You know,
Exactly.
and that goes back to my whole thing about eschatology, and why the Holy Land was holy. The Holy Land was holy because that was the dwelling place of God via the tabernacle. First you had when God brought Israel out of Egypt, he told Moses to build a tabernacle, and it was a tent where God dwelled. And it came to the time of David. David was praying. He was like, God, you don't have a house, so I'm going to build you a house. And God said, no, you have blood on your hands. You're a man of war. So you can't build my house. But your son, he gave a prophecy to David. He said, you're going to have a son, and I'm going to be a father to him, and he's going
Mm.
to build my house. So that son had that prophecy had an immediate fulfillment in Solomon.
Right.
Solomon built the temple, and he was the son of David, and God was a father to him. But then you keep reading the prophecy. It said if he messes up, then I'm gonna chastise him with the rod of men. Okay, so that's a twofold prophecy because Jesus Christ was the ultimate fulfillment of that prophecy. Jesus was the son of David.
Right.
God was a father to him, and he built this house that we call the church.
Right.
Church is the house is where God dwells. That was the whole point of the temple and the tabernacle. It was where you give sacrifices, where you do the priestly duties
Mm.
of God on a daily.
Right.
And now that the building, the temple is actually the church. So that means the land is no longer holy because
Mm-hmm.
the Bible said God dwells with his people, and
Mm-hmm.
and he dwells amongst people, which is the church.
Right.
So when we talk about this whole political thing, and when you start bringing in false ideology or false interpretation of what God has already spoken, then you get all this convolution,
Yeah.
and then you start accusing somebody as yourself. Oh well, he's saying this and that, and I'm like, no, that's not. No. The problem is the people are not reading, and they're not
Mm-hmm.
reading honestly.
Right.
And if the world is coming to an end, which I don't think so, which I vehemently don't think so, and it's not the world that's going to come to the end. It's us that are coming
Right.
to an end if we don't get our act together.
Yeah.
Because
And yeah.
these people, like, they don't understand. And look, and like you said, and I'm just going to reiterate what you said. We're not talking about Israel and Palestine. We're talking about Western hegemony versus a hostile ideology. And I'm not even talking about Islam. I'm talking about Hamas. I've
Mm.
read their covenant.
Nah,
Read
I
the
have
Hamas
too.
covenant.
Yeah.
So it's like you
So
said what?
like if you want to sit down, and I've sat and I've listened to Jewish um scholars, if you want to call them that, debate Christians. I've listened. If you were going to make an argument for a Jew to convert to Christianity, I mean, that's what you just kind of outlined there. Would be a sounds to me like a sound argument, right? For why someone who is Jewish by faith, or of course, Judaism kind of takes on these dual roles as both uh, an ethnic group, so to speak, and a religion, whatever. And but of course, because of course there are some Jewish Christians. There are some, of course. For two comes to mind for me. That's of course someone like an Andrew Clavin, who's ethnic Jew but is Christian, and I also think of the great Romanian priest of the Eastern Orthodox Church who spent 14 years in a Romanian prison, and that's Dr. Richard Warmbrand, who was an ethnic Jew. Of course, became a man of the cloth, became a Christian, and so if you want to make the case to a Jew as to why they should convert, well, okay, I'm all ready and willing to have that conversation. But and you just repeated, what I am consistently saying. When you hear Candace Owens, and when she is backed into a corner because she can't defend her idiotic position, because she does not know what she's talking about, it's difficult for me to ascertain whether or not she is just simply lying, has she become a full-fledged propagandist, or is she's operating in ignorance and emotion. It's hard for me to say. But this whole thing, of course, when she talks about Christ being king, and then people say, well, that is, of course, anti-Semitic on its face for simply saying, well, Christ is king. Of course, I've even said it myself, that you have a lot of left-wing Jews who have no fidelity whatsoever to their Jewish heritage and tradition will use anti-Semitism as a label or as a cudgel in order to attack those who are pointing out the fact that these people, in spite of the fact that they are Jewish or whatever that they may be, that these folks are in fact engaging in wicked things. There is truth to that, this kind of overusage of this whole concept of anti-Semitism that was thought up by a German political activist named Wilhelm Marr in the late 1800s. There is some truth to that. But when Candace Owens uses the term, she talks about Christ being king and so on, okay, great. There's nothing wrong with saying that on its face. But to your point, what would your forefathers say to you? They would be ashamed of you in light of your apathy. They would be ashamed of you in the face of your cowardice. Because it's one thing to just shout Christ is king to the heavens, to the hilt, when you're able to do so, because you are protected by a political infrastructure that allows you to do so. When I bring up Richard Warmbrand, and I brought up the fact that Richard Warmbrand wrote a book titled 14 Years, 14 Years of Torture was the name of the book that he wrote. I don't know if I mentioned it, but 14 Years of Torture, I believe, was the name of the book, because when the Communist Party came to power in Romania, they locked up all the priests, or at least the priests that were not on the payroll, if you will, of the Romanian Communist Party. Okay. Now, much of what we know about what happened in the infamous torture chambers of Pitești in Romania comes by way of Richard Warmbrand. I won't even get into the particulars of what actually took place in this prison and what the priests and believers were forced to do in Romania as political prisoners. Okay, but I don't know if someone like Candace Owens would have the strength of her convictions to be everything that she claims to be now and to do all the things that she claims to be now if she was at the point of a sword. It's easy for someone to say that, again, when they're free to do so. When they have the luxury and the leisure to proclaim that Christ is king. Well, if you actually and genuinely believe that Christ is king, the domain within which such a proclamation can be made so openly has to be protected from threats that come from without, because your forefathers understood this. Hence the entire legacy and the history of the Crusades. Hence the entire centuries-old rivalry between Eastern Rome and the Seljuks, or later on the Ottoman Empire. Hence the rivalry. And once the Eastern Roman Empire fell, it never rose again. And now, which was a place that was once the greatest Christian institution in the world, the Church of Hagia Sophia, situated in what is now modern day Istanbul, is now a mosque. And who knows if the former Asia Minor will ever be the same again. It is gone, and it has been subsequently changed forever. And the reason why I say all of that is because if you really wanted to spread the word of Christ, then what are you willing to do with your finite life, with your physical life, in order to protect that perspective so that it can be taught to later generations, as opposed to a potential future where the word and the truth of God's glory and the truth of God's grace through Christ will be stamped out by these peoples who do not believe as you believe. This whole Christ is king, and so therefore, well, what does that mean, Miss Owens? She doesn't know. Because again, it's almost like in her and many of these other so-called conservatives, is that it seems to me as though they've never picked up a book. They've never read anything. They don't know anything. They are completely unfamiliar with the fact that life can get pretty hard for people very, very quickly, and that the veil of civility is extremely thin. And we as Christians must protect the sanctity of that civility with our lives as need be, because these people to whom you are running cover for through your propaganda will put you to the sword just as quickly as they will you or I. Just ask the Jewish peoples who were the victims of the October 7th attack, who long went about the business of trying to live alongside the so-called Palestinians. And these are predominantly left-wing Jews in these kibbutzes and so on and so forth, who themselves were killed or had their friends and loved ones killed or kidnapped and tortured after having spent years and years and years being friends with, even hiring, working alongside, and working for, and so on and so forth, Palestinians who turned around and slit their throats once the order and once the command was given. I don't think people like Candace Owens actually realizes and recognizes what, in fact, we Christians are up against, since you claim that Christ is king. Well, if that's what you believe, Mrs. Owens, then you show as hell don't act like it. Because
They're not, man. It's, what you said, that veil of civility is thin. People don't understand the nature of this world
they
that we
don't.
live in. For Candace Owens, they're not gonna kill her. They're gonna rape her first,
Yeah.
and
It's
then they
right. It's
might
right.
then they might
They
kill her.
might kill
They
her.
might
If
kill her.
she's lucky, they'll kill her. If she's lucky, she'll get a quick death. If she's lucky.
Yeah, so man, that this
And it's
I
just
don't
these lies, and then the Christians, we say, well, they're Jews, and again, and this is why I did what I did in part one of that, is because you have a lot of, so just what you said. Oh, it's so your precision, your insightfulness is I'm serious, bro. I ain't trying to just blow smoke up your way. I'm telling you. When you talked about, people see what's going on, and it's like they haven't earned it. And I'm not saying, I mean, I'm not no gatekeeper. I'm not saying, well, you can't be a quote unquote conservative because I said so. No, that's not what I'm saying. But again, I am saying that you have to do something. You have to. There's a process involved. It can't just be, well, I'm so offended and appalled by the LGBTQ agenda, and so I'm a conservative today. Or just like you mentioned, I like Trump, and so all of a sudden I'm voting Republican all of now because I like Trump, and now I'm a conservative today. I'm a conservative all of a sudden. Or I don't like what's going on at the border, and so I'm a conservative all of a sudden. But yet, still, you hear a lot of these so-called just these new converts to conservatism. They still have a lot of left-wing ideas, right? But I'm a conservative today. And so now what you see with again, there's an object for them to recoil away from. And so, and that object now is this whole the idea and what we see taking place all throughout our society in the name of this ideology called Marxism, right? You have a lot of people who, for the first time in their lives over the past 2, 3, 4 years, maybe even more recently than that, have heard this term for the first time. They're beginning to unpack this thing for the first time. But many of them have really no serious, I mean, they don't have a deep, in-depth idea of not only what Marxism is, but just the entire history of the left prior to Marx. They're newly arrived converts. They don't know what they don't know. And so because of that, they too, at the same time, may consider themselves to be Christians. They look at the degradation of American culture vis-a-vis the secular, and they look at what pop culture is putting out in terms of music and film and pornography and so on and so forth. And of course, behind every curtain, they see someone Jewish, right? And so there is this correlation in their minds between Jewish people, i.e., and it goes even further than that. It goes from Jewish people to Judaism and the secular and so on and so forth. And they equate those things with Marxism. And as conservatives being opposed to Marxism, they are opposed to Jews and, as an effect, Judaism, because of their aversion towards Marxism. And so this is why I felt the need to unpack that and say everything that I said, because Judaism and Marxism are not these mutually or not these inclusive things. They're mutually exclusive, in fact, and there is a separate phenomenon, a separate reason as to why the majority of Jewish people are left-wing. That is something that is completely different, because the majority of the reason why the majority of Jewish people are left-wing has a lot to do with what I covered in part one of the discussion when I talked about the Napoleonic Wars and the relationship between France and Prussia. Prussia would later go on to become this unified Germany under Otto von Bismarck in the late 1800s, and hence you had this cauldron, this hotbed of a kind of Jewish intelligentsia. And thanks in large part, of course, with the rise of the Third Reich. I'm gonna break down all this stuff in great detail. And then you had a lot of these Jewish intellectuals exported a lot of these secular ideas out into the world, but they were merely a product of the kind of new for what at the time was this sort of new avant-garde intellectual. This was intellectually, I guess, in vogue amongst intellectuals, is what I'm trying to say, at the time in the late 1700s, early 1800s, and the Jewish peoples were simply caught up in the midst of a lot of factors that were going on in Europe at the time. Again, these are very, very deep, complex, complicated things that require a great ton of unpacking. And it can't just be simply, well, if you look at the Frankfurt School, right? We know about Marxism. We know about when the Frankfurt School came. And so they were all Jewish. And so you see these Jews, they're always doing something. They're always up to something. They're always in the background manipulating this and doing that and manipulating that. And then all of a sudden, these self-professed Christians, they, unbeknownst to them, I proclaim, have substituted the doctrine of original sin for what Isaiah talked about in the Bible when he warned the folks at the time to whom he was speaking not to worry or not to fret what these pagans refer to as conspiracy, because all things, of course, are in the hands of the Lord. And so now you have a lot of Christians, so-called conservative Christians, who are falling in line with a lot of conspiracy theories that to me, just quite frankly, it undermines their own claim that they are, in fact, true believers in Christ. It doesn't seem to be that way to me. And so this is why I went into discussing that, these ideas about Jews and Marxism and so on and so forth. And so that is where a lot of, you see, whether it be a lot of conservatives, you hear, people like Candace Owens talking about, they want to make it an economic issue. This is a budgetary issue. You have some conservative Christians that want to make this kind of like an ideological issue due to their opposition to Marxism and the whole civil rights, the whole pro-black movement. This was really a white Jewish movement in disguise, and so there's that. And then you have the left-wing contingent in the United States. They are opposed because, of course, because of their own Marxist kind of critical theory perspective about imperialism and so on and so forth. And so you have, and I covered this as well. So you have in the beginning, right, Jewish folks themselves who talked about, how, believing in sort of like these Marxian ideas and so on and so forth, this whole dialectical process and, the process of, materialism and dialectical materialism and what have you. And so the Jew took the brunt of the blame for the excesses of capitalism and how capitalism was promoting, inequality and so on and so forth. Right, we still hear the same exact talking points amongst the left-wing contingent today. And then fast forward on the opposite side of that debate, you have Jews that are taking the brunt of the blame for the perpetuation of Marxism. And so you have these statist ideas that are the Jewish people's fault. And then you have this idea that Jewish people are exploiting the masses of non-Jewish folk through usury and so on and so forth, all of these aspects of the free market. And so they're damned if they do, damned if they don't. When they assimilated into society, they claimed the Jewish people were trying to undermine society from within. When they stayed apart from society, they blamed them still for being conspiratorial. So they're damned if they do, damned if they don't. You see, for me, it is not a question of any of the other stuff that all these people are talking about. From a historical point of view, I'm not kissing Jewish people's asses because I believe they're the chosen. That's not what I'm saying. I don't care about any of that. I know I'm not talking to you. I'm using this as an example, this opportunity to kind of put my point of view out there. 'Cause I know you're not accusing me of that. But I don't care about the Jewish people being the chosen people. What history shows us, and this is why I said, even though cutting through the culture, that Jewish people have always acted as the proverbial canary in the coal mine, which means that when you see this populist fervor on both sides of the political spectrum, both the left and the right, for separate reasons, are now beginning to come together in their animosity towards Jewish people. That is a harbinger, a sign of bad things to come. That is the sign of a society that may or may not be in the latter stages of its own decline. That is a society that is on the brink of something catastrophic. I don't know what it is. I don't know what's going to happen. But history has shown us that, whether it's the next great war, or whatever the case, we don't know exactly what it is, but something is going to happen, and it's not going to be good. And so, yeah, a lot of Christians, quite frankly, need to, in my humble opinion, extremely humble opinion. I don't sound too humble, but they really need to check themselves,
Yeah.
quite frankly. Because
They need a
what we,
humble. You know what I'm saying?
yeah,
And if you don't understand something, you need to shut up and just sit back and ask somebody that does, and then learn. Because everybody wants to be leading in the forefront, and they don't understand the nature of the conflict. But it's funny that you said earlier. You said that I'm not one to speak the future. I'm not saying that I can tell the future.
right.
I say I can tell the future. I straight up say all you have to do is
What?
look at the present and look at the past.
Yes,
That's
yeah.
it. And
What?
I see. Look. I remember, and it's funny because everybody can relate to relationships.
Yeah, for
I was
sure.
dating. I was dating this one chick one time, and she kept putting her job over me.
Hmm.
And I sat her down one time. I'm like, where is this going? Because I'm not a priority to you. You know.
Hmm.
So it's like you're at this position now, and I see where this is going, but I'm asking you, where is this going? Because ultimately, if I'm riding with you right now, you're driving this car, you're deciding where we're going, and I see where we're going. So I'm asking you, to prove me right or prove me a liar. And of
Hmm.
course she got upset and all that stuff because she knew I called her bullshit. But that's what I see with society now. And if you know any kind of history, you see
Hmm.
you see the seeds germinating of a fallen empire,
Hmm.
and
Yeah.
every empire falls when it loses its moral position.
Yeah,
Because
yeah, that's right.
and I know people are gonna say, "Oh, you always talking about the Bible." Well, I mean that's the only thing that I got to go off of. The Bible says that it's righteousness that
Mm.
exalts a nation.
When when you said it brilliantly, bro. You know what I mean? You the fall of a fall of an empire, and you summed it up brilliantly. You said that when a society begins to lose its moral clarity, when it begins to, and that is what that is quite literally. And then again, we can simplify. We say, look at the present, look at the past. Boom, we can project the future. I'm not trying to say that there's anything divine, of course, occurring here, because I think it was was it the book of Ezekiel. I think it's chapter 6, verse 11. I think I can't remember off the top of my head, but that particular verse, or somewhere close around there, that particular verse was used as a as justification, or should I say, that verse was used as a reference point to suggest that, of course, the world had reached the end. Because when what that particular verse was referring to was it was referring to the region of Palestine at the time during the 1800s. Right? If you go and read that scripture,
Hold
and
on,
they
hold on,
thought
hold on, hold on, hold on. Repeat. You said it's talking about the land of Palestine. When?
I'm trying to remember. This was a popular a position amongst a lot of theologians back during like the 19th, 19th, 18th centuries. And to them, it was like, well, this is the end because look at the region.
Okay, yeah, yeah. Okay, so
It
yeah,
it it, it,
that's my
it
critique right there.
it's gone because that for all this talk about Israel is engaging in genocide and they came and kicked there was virtually no one there. And I mean, and you had folks, you had Christians, you had Jews, and you had Arab Muslims who, again, were subordinate to the Caliph. They were subordinate to the Ottoman Empire because Turks are not Arabs. Uh, there's a difference, and they will tell you as much. And even peoples of the region. I mean, and I'm not an expert on this, but you can even tell, Muslims from certain regions, you can tell from which region they hail or which part of the earth from which they hail, based upon their names, their last names, the Als and the Bens and the Bin Zaman and Al so and so and so on. Some of them are Egyptian, some of them are Persian, and so there's a difference, right?
Yeah.
And so they thought the end of the world was nigh, based upon the book of Ezekiel, and here we are, and we've seen that, of course, the region was able to, it does sure as hell doesn't look like it did a couple of centuries ago, and that is thanks solely to, or by and large, that is due to the Jewish peoples and the intellectual and human capital that they brought into the region. And I say all that to say, to go back to your point when you talked about moral clarity, is a loss in moral clarity is the single greatest indicator of a empire in decline. If you think that the conflict between Israel and its surrounding areas, because make no mistake about it, and I said, because I did a talk, Keisha King and she brought me on her show
I
several months ago to talk about this.
I remember.
And of course, what they call Arab sympathizers. They call it, of course, the Nakba, and the Israel folks. The war for Israeli independence, right? I mean, Israel was attacked by 5 or 6 separate nations, because the Arab League formed itself in 1945, based solely or centered solely around their opposition to the creation of the state of Israel, because I'm sorry, Candace Owens, Muslims don't like Jews. It's just that simple. Jews are mortal enemies of Muslims. They don't like them. They mean to kill them. They mean to destroy them. They mean to wipe them off the face of the earth. I know it's tough. I know it's sad. I know you don't want to believe it because you think that, well, the so-called Palestinians have a reason to be upset because of what the Israeli people are doing to them. When you believe that, and when you believe that, well, perhaps the Palestinians, so-called Palestinians, have the moral high ground, or perhaps you believe that it's a
Hold
little gray, it's a little
on,
bit both.
hold on.
Mhm.
Could you clarify what you're saying by, because you made a blanket statement. Could
Mhm.
you clarify it when you said Muslims hate Jews? Because it's for
Okay, I'll
people
clarify.
for people on the outside, they're not gonna get the nuance of what
Mm-hmm.
you're saying.
Mm-hmm.
Especially people that walk into the middle of a conversation, they don't get the beginning. So
Well,
could you
mhm.
clarify that? Because I made a point to that before you came on, because a lot of people don't really when we talk about faith and conviction,
Mhm.
a lot of people really, they will profess something, but when they're
Mhm.
not about their actions don't follow. But
I
it's
see
kind
where you're
of like
going.
a lot of even, and even this is even the case with Christians.
Mm-hmm.
Christians say I'm a
Mm-hmm.
Christian. You have no idea what you're professing.
That's right.
So could you expound on that, please?
They have no idea what they're professing, and I see you. You want me? You can explain it just as well as I could explain, but it's okay. I'll explain it because I'm the one that made the statement. Okay, that's a very ignorant thing to say," said someone in the comment section. That's a blanket statement to make, just like you alluded to. Oh, somebody will say something and profess to something and not entirely understand what it is that they are professing to. Human beings are very complex in that they have a multitude of things that they have to display fidelity to. All right. Certain things are just not as important as other things because as human beings, of course, we prioritize, right? And so, yeah, sure, you have Muslims, good, righteous Muslim people. When I say right, because remember, being ethical, should I say, not so much righteous, but being ethical, being a good person does not automatically mean that you're a saved person. Those things are completely different. Some people can, profess to be, followers of Christ and be some of the most, low down type of. But then you have someone else who is an atheist, for example, and they're the nicest person. They wouldn't, man, they'd give you the shirt off their back. I'm kind, I'm good. What it is, I mean, what do I need God for? Because I am, in fact, a good person. So those things are totally separate things. And so people prioritize what is important to them. Some Muslim people, particularly here in the West, and I know exactly what I'm talking about because I'm born and raised in Detroit, Michigan. We have an area here that many people all over the country have heard about because because a lot has been said about the Dearborn area in Metro Detroit, which is home to the demographically speaking, the largest concentration of Arab Muslims anywhere in the world outside the Middle East. I've been living here my entire life. I've never had an issue with Arab Muslims. I've always largely gotten along. It's not like that. There's not that here. Okay. And there hasn't been up until now. We see what happens to any given society when demographics change too rapidly because peoples here who may profess to be Muslims see, okay, the entrapments of the promises of Western civilization, and they dare not rock the boat because they are happy and content with their lives such as they are. And so there are certain aspects of the Quranic teachings and going into the Hadith and the life of Muhammad and so on and so forth that they simply put by the wayside or they ignore because they would much rather live in peace with their Christian neighbors than stay true to what it is, in fact, that the Quran teaches them. I just mentioned the Nakba, and there's a reason why I brought up the Nakba, because the people, matter of fact, I can tell you exactly who sent the order out. The order was given to the peoples of the region of Palestine to leave their homes because Egypt, led by Egypt, and it was Lebanon and Iraq, there was a ton of other Arab nations involved in the attack on Israel in 1947, to leave. If you aren't going to join in on the fight, you either join in on the fight against the Jew or you leave because we are going to kill you because it is your duty. It is your duty to wage war against the non-believer. It is your duty to wage war against the infidel. You don't see, and it's funny because I'm the one that's ignorant, but you don't see these problems, 1948, my bad, you don't see these problems in any Christian majority country in the world. In the one Jewish majority country in the world, you don't see this. You see these problems everywhere, right? And in the form of various infidel taxes and so on and so forth. Jews and Christians who live inside Muslim majority countries, if they are allowed to exist there at all, have to accept second-class citizenship, because the Quran demands that if any professing Muslim who claims to be a true lover and believer in Allah cannot allow himself to be ruled over by a non-Muslim. Not only that, but there can be no state power controlled by anyone who is not a Muslim in their midst, lest it be the responsibility and the duty of a true believing Muslim to wage war against that state until it no longer exists. It is in the Quran. I'm sorry, I hate to break it to you. I know it hurts your feelings, but this is why you see these problems and issues, all of this, what we would refer to here in the West as this political and cultural dysfunction. This cultural dysfunction in play all over North Africa, South Africa, the Middle East, and so on and so forth. This is why this occurs only where they are. But I'm the one that's ignorant, and I don't know what I'm talking about. Again, yes, Arab Muslims serve in the Knesset. How many Christians and Jews have any serious political sway over Saudi Arabia or Iran and so on? So you don't see no Christian nation in the world behave in this manner. Only Muslim majority countries behave in this manner. Arab Muslims, not just Arab, African Muslim, Turkish Muslim, it doesn't matter. They are just as much prey to Islamic authorities than non-Muslims if they are considered to be not true believers and followers of the dictates of Muhammad, because it is their duty to wage a jihad. This is why the majority of Palestinian peoples agree with what it is that the Palestinian Liberation or the PO and so on and so forth, and Hamas, they agree with what they do because they believe as they believe. They're the ones who have this problem. It doesn't exist anywhere else. And so, and I'm gonna close out here. For the Muslims serve in the Knesset. Yes, goes back to what I said initially, because Israel, being an outpost of Western civilization, allows for them the opportunity to enjoy these luxuries and these liberties, and they place a kind of sacrosanct air upon those things just as much, if not more so, than they do the adherence to the Quran. Because like you alluded to, people believe in things and don't actually believe in them wholeheartedly and carry them out to the letter, because they are pulled in an opposite direction by other trappings that life can provide them with, that can bring them a more profound and a more fulfilled life, and not just going around killing non-believers.
Yeah.
Because and another one of the reasons why Muslims believe, and mind you, bro, I'm gonna lay all this out, bro. It's gonna take several hours. And the reason why, even the Quran says, go and read the Quran, conservative so and so. Don't take it. Don't listen to me. I'm crazy. I don't know what I'm talking about. They even say that not only is the Jew and the Christian, and they say that anyone who aligns themselves with the Jew or even the Christian is no different from them. Matter of fact, the Quran even goes on to say that, first of all, calls the Jew the lowest of the low, that the Jew is an ape, refers to the Jew as, in multiple sunnah, in multiple areas of the Quran refers to the Jew as an ape. It says in the Quran, I can't quote it word for word, but it's in there, and I'm gonna quote it in my next YouTube upload. I got it all laid out. That the Christian, you can deal with the Christian a little bit, because the Christian he's not so arrogant as the Jew, that the Christian will in fact listen to reason. You may be able to convince the Christian to become a believer, i.e., to become a Muslim. But if the Christian is not willing to become a Muslim, then he is no different from the Jew. He too is to be put to the sword. So the Jew and the Christian is not meant to suffer in the afterlife. They are also meant to suffer in this life. The Quran says that. And when people say, in many Muslim clerics and scholars, like I say, I'm a stone's throw away from Dearborn. They got imams in Dearborn talking about death to America. I'm not even a stone's throw away from Dearborn Heights. I used to live right across the street from there, so I know what I'm talking about. There is no other religious group in the world besides the secular Marxists that's running around here talking about death to America. All right, and the reason why the reason why I know I ain't lying, Neil, and the reason why they say, well, why isn't it fulfilled in this way? Why hasn't Allah done this? Why are we still living underneath the boot heel of the Christian and the Jew? And what the Islamic religious authorities suggest and what they claim is that Muslims have, guess what? Oh, Muslims have become too secularized. They have adopted too many Western values. And so Allah is punishing the Muslims, right? Because they have accepted the wayward and secular ways of the Christian and the Jew. They listen to our music. They like our movies, right? They believe in, you got Muslim men and women who believe in this bullcrap of equal treatment of women. They let their women go to school. They let their women wear, like I say, I got Muslim women who are friends. I got Muslim female friends who make fun of traditional Muslim women who wear hijabs. They got a word that they call them. They call them scarfies. If I'm lying, I'm flying. And we laugh about it. I say, man, why you call them scarfies? He said, man, because some crazy ass women be wearing, wearing them hijabs. They call them scarfies. Yeah, we don't like them scarfies because those are your more older fashioned, your more traditional female Muslims that they mock and make fun of. And these women, like I say, they go out, they look like Westerners. They wear our clothes, our jeans, all of that stuff. And they hamdulillah and Allah, they doing all that. But they don't dress like that. And they make fun of those women who dress like that. But the clerics, the religious Muslim authority, the Muslim women who have adopted Western ways, who don't want to kill Christians, who don't want to kill Jews, who don't want to raise jihad, they will kill them too. Because they are the reason why the Muslim man does not rule the earth as Allah promised. Because too many Muslims have bought into Western ways. So when you say, well, that's not all Muslims, of course it's not all Muslims. But that's the problem, because that's the quiet side. That's the quiet part.
That's what the whole Boko Haram thing was about. I don't know if anybody is familiar with the Boko Haram, but
come on, Will.
That's a whole nother show. But I had did a show a couple of weeks ago, and one of the points was pointed out that cultures don't clash, and I'm like cultures clash all the time. Like,
excuse me?
Yeah, I was like, cultures clash all the time. Like, that's the whole point, and that is my critique of Christendom in the West, because
Muslims can be Westerners. There are some Westernized Muslims.
Yeah,
there are.
But see, the thing is that my criticism of Christendom is the West is that we bought into this idea of just wait on Jesus because he's going to come back to save us. Millions of people have died
Believing that.
And when because when I was growing up, I grew up in the Bible Belt, and that was the prevailing belief that we're it's going to come, and the rapture's going to come. So it kind of makes you withdraw from society a little bit. Because, and then
Mhm.
think about the rationale of a young man who thinks somewhat rational. I'm just like, well, if Jesus is about to come back, then why am I even bothering with
Wow.
any of this? So I'm not gonna try my hardest. I'm not gonna put forth excellence. I'm gonna
Hmm.
withdraw from the public forum of try to influence culture and all that. And that's what Chad had commented in a show that I had did, and I had told him, I was like, man, I would like to talk to you about eschatology, because one thing that bothers me that he's saying on y'all shows is that, well, it's all gonna get worse anyway. And saying that to a young man that that is born with a sense, because I think a young man is born with a sense of duty and
Right.
fervor to out their
For sure.
duty. But if all the things are just inevitably going to
Inevitably.
happen, then why even bother? So that's why
Oh,
the whole point of understanding eschatology. If you misunderstand eschatology and what the Bible is putting forth, you will convolute this whole matter.
that's
Because on surface, it would seem that you and I are disagreeing, and I'm not. I'm wholly agreeing with what you're saying about you know about just cultures and conquest in general, because that's just the nature of mankind. You know,
yeah.
so so it's like you know if you say you're a Christian, you have a duty to your society. The first commandment was to have dominion and subdue the land. That was
Right.
the first thing God told. Well, He said, "Be fruitful and multiply, and have
Hmm.
subdue the land, subdue the earth, and whatnot." You know what I'm saying? So if you have this notion that oh, what's all about to burn anyway, then you're just gonna be like, whatever. You're not gonna move with that fervor that you should. So now,
Right.
that I know, now that I have this
Listen.
paradigm shift, now I'm just like, okay, well, all right, well, I do have a future, and my great grandchildren have a future. So it's on
Hmm.
me to leave them a society and for them to inherit a society to where they don't have to deal with the things that we were dealing with. Because I think it's cowardly to just kick the can down the road and be like, oh well, if Jesus don't come back, then the world's gonna get worse, and we'll just let the other generation deal with it. That's cowardly.
Yeah,
That's weak. Just
it
like
is.
I'm just like, we have to shit. Everything
Let-
everything starts from ideology, thought, paradigm. So we have to shift our paradigm. If we're gonna call ourselves Christians, it will behoove us to really understand what those scriptures are saying.
Mhm.
You know,
Exactly. And here's the thing. Oh, let me say this last thing. Oh, and I'm gonna let you go, man. I mean, I know I took up the majority of the time because I wanted to kind of get a lot of my points out and dip out. Because I know you and I are we're both big time talkers. We both long winded. We both can talk. So I'm gonna just say this, and then I'm gonna let you go ahead. You can, of course, I ain't gotta. I'm telling you what to do on your own stream, but I'm gonna dip out, man. You can keep on streaming. I'll probably be watching you. Um, you made a great point. You said millions of people have died believing that, right? And I'm going to use this as an example. I talked about it earlier. Uh, when Constantinople was finally sacked, when it was finally sacked by Mehmet II, when it was finally sacked by the Turks, the 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 Greek-speaking Christians of Constantinople fled into the Church of Hagia Sophia to pray. At this particular time, the Byzantine Empire was being ruled over by Constantine the Tenth, I believe it was. And and of course, the a huge part of why the Byzantine Empire had become so vulnerable is because its population had shrunk, had decreased rapidly because, of course, they weren't reproducing. Again, that's another sign of an empire in decline. But again, to your point, I think it all begins with, of course, a loss of virtue and a loss of moral clarity, because, of course, you just spoke about God commanded us to be fruitful and multiply. We don't multiply, you die. And so Constantinople was vulnerable because the population had to be reduced and so on. And there were a lot of other different factors. My point is that Christians believe, particularly the Christians in that time in that area, believed that, of course, they were the true curators and the guardians of God's true word. These Muslim hordes to the east, they were just these pesky little insects that kept rearing their ugly heads every now and again. And the Byzantine Empire had to keep putting them down. And of course, they would call for reinforcements to the west, and the various crusades and the Franks and so on and so forth. During the time in which, of course, a lot of Jews who existed at the same time in that area, they too were, made subordinate, or they were subordinated, so on, to various Christian powers, Muslim powers. It would kind of go back and forth, and Jews were sort of caught in the middle of that. My point is that these people believe that that God would eventually intercede and send them an archangel. When the writing was on the wall and it was clear that Constantinople was going to fall, they thought God, in the waning moments of the battle, was going to send them an archangel. And that archangel never came. Subsequently, once Constantinople was sacked and the Byzantine Empire had fallen, they had marbleized, or so the myth goes, that they had marbleized Constantine the Great in a case of marble. There's a statue still exists of Constantine, not Constantine the Great, the first Constantine, but Constantine, it was either the 10th or the 11th. And, it is said that when God chooses, when it is God's time, that Constantine will rise again, and he's going to break through the statue and come back to life and restore the glory of Rome and restore the glory of the Byzantine Empire when it failed to the Muslims. So these people were slaughtered in the Church of Hagia Sophia, were murdered in their church as they prayed for God to intervene, and that intervention never came. You fast forward to when the Ottomans were on the losing side of the First World War. That began the Greco-Turkish War in around 1919. Because the Greeks believed that now the time was right, because Constantinople belongs to them. That region belongs to them. That's their country. And so they thought that they were going to constitute a new Greco-Christian empire. And once the Western powers, who were on the winning side of World War I, like the United States and Great Britain, etc., had no interest in facilitating that, they allowed the Greek rebellion to get put down by Mustafa Ataturk, and that eventually killed this whole idea of a new Byzantine Empire. And that's when, of course, Constantinople, or Constantinia, was officially renamed Istanbul. And the Eastern Orthodox Church has never been the same. But they believed that God was going to change it. That's what they believed. And they lost the war to the Muslims, and it never came to fruition. This is why I say that I'm not in the prediction business. I'm going to tell you what needs to happen. And if you want to bring about a certain outcome, here's what you, a living flesh and blood human soul, a flesh and blood being in the now, here's what you need to do, and this is what we need to do in order to prevent that thing from happening. I don't know what's going to happen, but I know what will happen if we do this. Okay? And I'm going to tell folks something. When people say, well, Chuck, that's an ignorant thing for you to say about Muslims. We must always have a custodianship, a healthy custodianship over our civilization, so as the minority groups within that particular societal context can operate with the same level of rights and the freedom of happiness and all the things outlined in the Declaration of Independence. It is the majority opinion, or the kind of underlying foundational perspective that protects the rights of the minorities. When you allow this amalgamation of the factions, like Alexander Hamilton warned us against, or it might have been James Madison in Federalist 10, when he reminded us and warned us about factionalism. The tail begins to wag the dog, where then the so-called disparate minority groups who have an axe to grind against the majority that has long protected their rights begin to determine what goes on in the society, by and large, then that's when your empire is going to fall. Because in order for Muslims, and I hope some of this is sticking, in order for Muslims to coexist with Christians happily and in peace, Christian hegemony must remain. That's what war and conflict, that's what this is all about. Because Christianity and all of the Western traditions that go along with that, we protect the rights of Jews, Christians, and Muslims. Sharia shall not be the whole of the law. We protect the rights of the Muslims. Muslims don't protect the rights of Jews or Christians. Muslims don't protect the rights of Christians. And that's the point, Candace Owens, you dumbass. If you want Christ to be king, and if you want Muslims to be free to practice their religion as they see fit and deal with God when they meet him on their terms, when they meet their maker, then we must maintain hegemony. We cannot let the Muslim empire win. We cannot let them win. That's the point. All this talk about, well, I don't like Jews, and I'm sick and tired of people claiming anti-Semitism, and Ben Shapiro this, and George Soros that, and blah, 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 blah. Karl Marx and George Soros, if they Jews, then I'm the king of Persia. You see what I'm saying? Christian hegemony must
That's
remain.
fine.
And that's it.
That's all.
That's all I got.
That's all I've been saying. That is all I've been saying, and that's the important thing about understanding.
We protect Muslims. They won't protect us.
That's the thing about understanding the Bible and exactly what it's saying, and you know the way people approach this issue. What you said, you know, lazy. That's the same way people approach the Bible. They're lazy. They just go off of what they think somebody else said, and you know, I'm just, you know, people are out here making a mess, but
And hegemony can only be maintained when you are strong. Not when you are strong, Theo, but when you are strong militarily, politically, economically, everything. God didn't give us the gift, and this is what the pagan. God didn't give us the gift of reason and rationality. God made man. He gave us everything that we needed. He didn't say just sit back and, you know, believe, and that he just gonna sit back and no. You got to do something. You got to be something. You got to do something. You got to be somebody. Especially if you want to reconcile yourself back with me and deem and prove yourself worthy, I gave you everything you needed. Don't sit back and just rely upon me, because if you do, you will be consumed. So all this talk about, well, Christ is king and God's this and God's that, like God is going to, God can do whatever he wants. Again, I'm not in the prediction business, and I don't claim to know the mind of God. But at the end of the day, man, you got to be smart. You got to understand that if you want to protect the sanctity of Christendom, it's not just simply throwing words at people. You're not going to convict people with the strength of your words. Believe in God, Christ is king, you better, and show up to a battlefield without a weapon. Because there's people out there who will never see things the way you do. If there's anything we know, and if anything we glean from history, that is it. That cultures do clash, separate cultures come into conflict, and the culture that wins the war is the culture that gains the gift or the award of creating convention. You either fall in line with us or you fall by the wayside. It's gonna be them or it's gonna be us.
and that's really just only for women, because for men they're just going to castrate all the men. You know, women are spoils of wars. Men are killed, or you know, if they're lucky, they're castrated. And that's
Right.
I'd rather be killed than castrated, like straight up.
Straight up, yeah. All right, oh man, I'm gonna let you go, man. We gotta come together, man. And any time, bro. You know, if I'm free, I'm with it. I'm supposed to be going. I'm gonna try to do a live with Chad O. Jackson later. We was texting about it earlier, so let me go ahead and take care of my responsibilities, and that way I can get some free time maybe, and I can do a live with Chad. We'll see. But thanks for having me on your platform, bro. And got to do it again sometime, man. And always appreciate the support and all that good stuff, man.
Oh yeah, always, man. I appreciate you stopping through just to talk to little old me, man. Because you like Ludacris in the 2000s. Everybody wants you on a feature. You know what I'm saying? So
All right, bro.
take care, man.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
All right, man. Y'all, that was heavy. But, these conversations need to be had, and I think that we all need to really just take a step back and see where we really stand. And like I said before, I've said in another show, it's not about why you do. It's not about that you do something. It's why you do something. It's not about where you stand. It's why you're standing there. Because when the squeeze is put on you, what comes out is gonna come out. So that's why I'm just like, I don't want anybody that just had an epiphany last night being like, okay, I'm on your side now. Nah, I don't work like that. You got to prove yourself. You got to earn your stripes. But does anybody have any questions before I go? And I appreciate everybody for stopping through. I'm trying to build up my YouTube channel. I'm trying to get at least 50 people so I can go live on YouTube. But exactly, Neil. Stand for something or fall for anything, man. Most people would rather fall for anything because you don't have to exert any energy to fall. You just fall. That's how cowardly a lot of people have become. And I don't want to be the one on here, from a high mountain pointing the finger at people, but I just see a lot of just it's like Christ said, beware of the leaven of the Pharisees, which is false doctrine. So people are falling victim to these false doctrines, and these false doctrines are captivating people. They're killing. They're the reason people are dying. You know. So but anyway, I guess since nobody has any questions, man, I appreciate y'all stopping through, and I will holler at y'all.